Healing with crystals is an ancient practice. Yet did you know that the essence of gemstones can be used in homeopathy? Spiritual awakening, self-awareness, and intuition are some of the gifts that gemstone remedies can bring to your life. Homeopath, teacher, and author Giovanna will show you a different perspective on the healing properties of these magical gemstones. Join us in Gemstones and Crystals in Homeopathy and discover the power of gemstone remedies.
Hi everybody, welcome and thank you for being here with Gemstones and Crystals in Homeopathy. I'm your host, Giovanna Franklin, and today I have a great guest. And let me tell you something about this guest. Why it's so important to me that she's here today. Because apart from all the amazing things that she has accomplished in over 30 years of experience as a homeopath, she also is the one who opened the door for me as a homeopath and to discover gemstone remedies. When I had my very first case that needed a gemstone remedy, and I had an inkling that that was what I was looking for, but I had no idea what gemstone remedies were. I put this in my book. It was my amethyst case, and I came across one of her videos on YouTube where you can still find her, and she explained one of the ways that you can recognize the gemstone remedies. And she talked about how gemstone patients often can present a kind of cross of symptoms or picture between two different kingdoms, like a plant and a mineral, for example. And that was my aha moment. And that opened the door to more research and finding out about gemstones. And here we are. And so tonight, I would like her to explain again and expand for everybody, how do we recognize gemstone cases? Because very often patients come to me or contact me and they say, oh, I've seen your webinar or I've read your book, and I'm sure that I would really fit a gemstone remedy. I'm not sure which one, and I would really like a consultation with you to find out. And I always say, yes, that's great. But remember that in homeopathy, there are thousands of different remedies from all different kingdoms, from all different types. And I don't want you to be disappointed if we find out that perhaps you are not a gemstone remedy, you need something else. You need a plant or you need an animal. And so this is what we're going to talk about tonight. And here to explain things for us is the amazing Anne Vervarcke. Welcome.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thank you for having me. And what an introduction, huh? Okay. Yeah, where do we start?
Okay, let's start from the beginning. So we have a patient, and for those who are perhaps not familiar with homeopathy or how a session works, it's really like going to any other therapist. And we, as homeopaths, we listen a lot. And so it's very much a listening exercise, kind of like going to a psychotherapist, perhaps, or a counselor. So we listen, we take down all your symptoms, all your issues and your life. And so, Anne, how do you make that decision if you think that's a gemstone? What tips you off?
Okay. Well, that could be a long answer. Let's see how I can boil it down to the most essential characteristics. What you say is the exact. Homeopathy is about listening, and we listen in a very specific way. As homeopaths, we listen, and that's a bit contrary to psychotherapeutic setting. We listen to the uniqueness in the person, while a psychotherapist will listen to the emotional stuff and the ideas or the convictions or the beliefs behind it that are the reason for the emotions, and try to somehow manage the emotions or to get over them or whatever. We listen to what is unique in you, what makes you you. And that's the reason for us to say, okay, we look we search the most suitable remedy that is similar, because homeopathy is the law of similars. So we look for something in the outside world that has a similar pattern. That's pattern matching. That's what we do, homeopaths. That's the shortest version. Now, as you said, we have thousands of remedies. And I've been teaching for years, and over the years, it was already, I mean, in the Burrique, more than 1,000 remedies to study. But throughout the years, hundreds and if not thousands remedies were added, and it is unmanageable for homeopaths to know these remedies. So we needed um, ways of searching them, finding them, systems, and that is what evolved out of a need. So we as a, you say, these ideas are coming to different people at the same time because it's in the air. So on different places, people came to the same ideas. We have to systematize. And the question was, or yeah, the hypothesis was, if we have remedies from the same group of family in the outside world, not in homeopathy, do they also have homeopathic similar characteristics? Do they have common characteristics? Can we group them? And the answer was yes. As you said, plants have plant characteristics, minerals have mineral characteristics, animal have animal characteristics. So that was a big step forward. If you need an animal, you don't have, I mean, an animal remedy for a person. You don't need to bother or to worry about all the other hundreds of remedies that are out of your sight. You only have now to, well, only the animal kingdom, which is still a few thousand, but at least it's limited. So with the expansion came also the system, the systematizing of our homeopathic practice, and that was an immense step forward. But I was a little bit unhappy with only 3 groups. Animals, plants, and minerals was a bit too limited. Why? Because our books are full of remedies that don't belong to these 3 groups. So what do we do with these poor patients? If we limit ourselves to these groups and they fall out of our boxes, then they will never get the right remedy. And that is actually a step backwards, because before we used to use those remedies and now they don't fit in our system. So you have to expand your system. And that's what I tried to do over the years, and to find, or to try to find, common characteristics of more groups. For instance, you have the periodic table where it all started, because that's, a manageable group of remedies. The elements, we have like 100 something. That's doable. Whereas you start studying spiders, then you have 80,000, or you start studying plants, you have 100,000 of plants. But we started with something that we could manage, and that was a very good starting point. But still, there are more mineral-like patients that don't belong to the periodic table. So we have the carbon compounds, which is a group in itself. We have Roger Morrison, who wrote a book, 250 carbon compounds, all in our materia medica. No new remedies, old remedies that he somehow fitted in again, because otherwise they like fell out of our boxes. And the same applies to gemstones. We didn't use gemstones because they're not minerals, they're not on the periodic table, or we had to remember a proving, or we had to have to find or stumble upon a symptom that our mind would go to a gemstone. But we have no grip on the group as such. And what I did is actually mapping all these groups in what I would call like a world map, and maybe we can show it, otherwise it's a bit virtual what I'm talking about.
Yes, can we see is that page 2 you need?
That is page 2, and I wanted to show it because then people will have an idea why gemstones are there, because gemstones have their particular place. So you have 2 pages, and there's a big division. It's second and third dimension. I'm not going into details, but all those groups of second dimension page have something in common. and they are different than all the other groups that are on the other page, on the third dimension, which also have something in common. That means fungi, animals, and plants have something in common, and all the groups on the second dimension, elements, charcoals, carbon compounds, celestial bodies, viruses, bacteria, and gemstones, they all have something in common. So that's the first thing that will help us. Like they sound like a mineral, but they are, and they belong on the mineral page because they have characteristics, but they're not mineral.
So when you
thing.
say they sound like a mineral, what can you give an example for those who are maybe not familiar? What does a mineral sound like?
Yeah,
What does it say?
yeah. That's a good question, because that is when homeopathy actually becomes fun. A mineral patient, let's call him, I would say a 2D patient, because that's the whole page. All of them will present in a way that is rather, and it's all very subtle, but it's rather distant. It is rather factual. They will talk about their symptoms and label them, instead of sharing their symptoms with you and their emotions with you, which would be a plant. A plant would share his emotions. You would feel what the plant person feels, because he makes a clear picture, he gives examples, and you can picture the whole situation before your very eyes. You feel what the patient feels. While the 2D talks about and labels it. Like, this happened and I was sad. This happened and I felt like this. He has feelings. We all have feelings. We're humans. But there's a difference in the presentation. And the basic feeling, like the deepest experience of self on 2D, is one of emptiness, existence, and like, existing, and a need, or a feeling of lack to exist. There's something they need in order to exist. There's something they lack or they lose, in order to exist. So, and that's their feeling of emptiness, which is a deep, very unpleasant feeling. And the presentation will be the relationship with the homeopath will be, let's say, they see you as in your role as a homeopath, not as the person, not as Giovanna. You will be the homeopath. That means a plant is different again. They will ask, how is your mother? They will say, your new hairdresser is very good. Oh, you have a nice office. I mean, they see everything. They see the whole environment. They relate to you. They see you as a person. And the 2D will see you in your role as somebody who can help them with their problem, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
They have, that's why it's a little bit more distant, and they will present their symptoms mostly in an orderly way, because they want to help you in order to make a good prescription. But since they assume that you are the specialist, which you are, and you are the one who's going to help them, they will give you short answers and wait for your questions, because you know what you need to know in order to prescribe. They don't know, so they wait, and it is more question answer, question answer, question answer. And with 3D, it's completely different. A 3D person comes in, you ask, what can I do for you, and they talk for 25 minutes, if not longer.
Right.
I have plant cases, they start talking for an hour. You can't stop them, and you know their whole life from the first paragraph.
So the minerals belong to, on your diagram on the second page, and
Yes.
the plant would be 3-dimensional. Okay.
Yeah, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional. Yeah, because 2-dimensional is, in my idea, everything that is under your feet. So we live in 3D on the surface of the earth. So that's where we live. Animals, humans, plants, and under our feet are the rocks and the stones and the ores and the elements and the gems and all the building blocks for 3D. So that's 2D. It's a, let's say, a bit of a slower world, a denser world, and also the patient is, if I can say so, the case is more simple usually. I'm not saying that the person is a simpleton, but the case in itself usually is less complex. Very often it's only one problem. Yeah. But
Yes.
that doesn't mean they're not intelligent or something, but the case itself. And so with a plant case, sometimes you have 10 pages of notes and you don't know what's the problem because you understand why they feel the way they feel. And with a 2D case, mostly for us, is easier.
Yes,
Because
I
it's
actually agree because with a plant, a plant person will go off the tangent and will talk about all sorts of things, and
also the
there's a
things.
lot of feelings, and as a therapist, you can get entangled in those feelings if you're not careful, and at the end, when you finish the session, you've got all your notes and like you say, pages and pages, and you're like, okay, what do I do now?
What do I do now? Exactly. I always say if you have this situation and you don't know, you don't see the wood for the trees, it's plant. You
Yes,
don't
and that's a very good plant expression as well, the wood for the
as well.
trees.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the language as well is a good indication sometimes.
Absolutely. You see, in let's say 2D cases, you have the feeling that the person is the main character on his theater, and all the rest is in the background. He is the one. It's I, me, and mine. That's the importance. Plant and animals, they live in an environment, they're very aware of their environment, and they relate. Plants, they relate because they're sympathetic, and they're very reactive. Animals, they relate because they want to see who is the smartest, who is the fastest, who is the best. There's a hierarchy in animal kingdom. They want to make sure where you are on the hierarchy.
Yes.
So and you will feel this because they will test you. Yeah. And so and in 2D you don't have this. You don't have this testing, but they give you the information short in definitions, not in feelings and examples and in all kind of stories, but with definitions, and they wait for your next question. Of course, this is what I say is extreme. It is
Yes. Yeah.
it's
But
not that clear cut.
generalizing, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you see on the map, so you have, for the people who are familiar with it, you have the 7 rows of the periodic table, and they have their characteristics. And you can see if you go to the 4th, there you find gemstones. So what is the 4th? I make it very short. The first is symbolized. It's all symbolic. The first is not in the world yet. The second is symbolized by the birth process, is separation from the one you live by. So it's symbiotic relationships. You need another to live. The third is about growing up, building your identity. Who am I? And the fourth, so you are incarnated, you are separated, you build up your identity. The fourth row is about going into the world and sustaining yourself. And this is like we know these remedies like arsenicum and this ferrum, kali, all these remedies. What do they want? They want a normal life. A normal life like everybody else. They want a job, they want a house, they want a family, they want a car, they want a pension, they want 2 vacations in a year, and they want a good health. And finances, good finances. That's what matters. So, normal civilian, a normal life. 50 is about being special. Now I know how to be normal. Now I want to do something special. 6 is about taking responsibility for the others. And 7 is disintegration. So 4 is actually all those patients who have the ambition or have anxiety around having a normal life. And that's where you find your gemstones.
Right. Okay. Okay, I hadn't looked at it that way. So just to recap for those who are listening, if you were good at chemistry at school, or if you were not, go back to your chemistry books and get hold of your periodic table. And in homeopathy, we used exactly the same periodic table, and the difference is that in homeopathy, we see the elements in a way that as a metaphor for the human life, basically. And so you start from, there are rows and columns, and the first row, you find the noble gases, and that's what Anna was talking about, before incarnating into our bodies. That's before birth, and so on. And then the different stages from being totally dependent from the mother because you're still an infant, and so on until death. So this is how homeopathy really looks at the universe. And this is why one of my teachers used to say that, everything is homeopathy because everything can be turned into homeopathic remedies, and homeopathy is everywhere. And Absolutely. So it just gives you this kind of amazing view and the sense that we're all linked. Everything in the cosmos is linked. Yes. Okay. So gemstones are in the fourth row. And so from there, how do we differentiate an arsenicum from rose quartz, for example?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because now we have, and it's very condensed, 2-dimension information, and we have fourth row information. So already we know a lot about we observed a lot about the patient, and then how do you know it's not an element? How do you know it's a gemstone? Well, because they're different. They have fourth row issues, and they have fourth row behavior and how to say ambitions or anxieties. But they don't fit on the periodic table. You cannot squeeze them in one of the 18 stages because they have emotional issues. And that's where we get confused, because we think, but this sounds like a plant. Their emotional issues, they have grief, or they miss their family members, or anyway, they seem emotional, but it is presented in a mineral way. And it's so much so with gemstones that, in my teachings, when I have, classes or master classes, I say, if you see a patient and there's a discussion, it's a plant, no, it's a mineral, it's a plant, it's a mineral. If you can't choose, it is a gem. Because they have these two characteristics, and the moment you feel yourself doubting between the two because they have both, it's a sure sign of a gem. You can trust it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Yes. So that's a very, very good, very structured, methodic way of finding out. That's really, really, really good. And structure is a very mineral word.
Again, yeah, and it's also very practical. I mean, there's more to it. I will elaborate a little bit, but that's like the first clear sign. Throughout consultation, you feel yourself doubting, and in the end, you still doubt. So it is not the one or the other; it's both.
Yes,
definitely. And they look cool outside. They have this like how to say like nothing sticks to it, like they're not touched by it, which is the case with the gemstone. They have this smooth, hard surface, but they have a soft inside. Yes. And that's different than with other minerals. The minerals is the inside, or the elements, the inside and the outside is the same, or matches. And with gemstone, it doesn't seem to match. But they have both. It's a way of presenting themselves to the world. It's like, I'm cool, I'm strong, a bit distant, hard even. But the way they talk about their concerns and their worries and other people is very soft and considerate.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, that's really, really interesting. And that's what got me hooked. This concept of the crossover between natural kingdoms, that's what got me started. So I think it's a good time for a break, and we'll come back shortly and continue this conversation.
OMTimes TV.
In her book, Gifts from the Earth, Giovanna Franklin illustrates the healing properties of 12 gemstone remedies. Access real case studies from her practice and dive into the wonderful world of gemstone remedies. This is a practical guide on how to use gemstones in homeopathy. Whether you are an experienced practitioner or a beginner, you will find this book a fascinating read. Gifts from the Earth is available at Amazon. The Academy of Evolutionary Homeopathy is a members-only online learning center. A place to learn about homeopathy and other holistic modalities. For $22 a month, you will have unlimited access to evergreen courses like Gemstone Remedies, Sea Remedies, Metamedicine, and Biogeometry, and much more. Follow the Academy of Evolutionary Homeopathy on Facebook. See you there.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Hi, and we're back with Anne Vervarcke, who is explaining to us how to recognize a gemstone remedy case. So we were at this crossing between plant kingdom and mineral kingdom. And just to give you an example, that was my first case that I encountered, and I was exactly confused because I had this lady who talked like a mineral, and what I mean by that, she was a very well organized person. She was very organized, and she used words in her vocabulary. It was always about structure, organization, and metaphors that involved walls, rock. Her gestures, her body language was very geometric, I would say. It was very, using her hands and geometric shapes. But then she was really sensitive, both emotionally and physically. She had a lot of allergies, a lot of intolerances. And she was incredibly, like Anna was saying, very soft inside. And I could not decide where I was going with this case. And that's when I found Anne Vervarcke's video, like I said, and she explained what she just did just now. There was this cross between plant and mineral. And I wanted to ask you, do you also encounter crosses between the animal kingdom and the mineral kingdom sometimes? I haven't encountered that.
Yeah, that's a whole topic in itself. What they have similar in the beginning is, and that's again context. I emphasize the context a lot. The context, that means, what do you observe? What is not in your notes? That's the context. What do you observe? How is the relationship going? How do you feel with your patient? How does the patient make you feel? How is the evolution of the consultation? That's all context. Sometimes, people need to warm up. Eh? And the context in an animal case in the beginning is similar to a mineral case because they don't give you a lot. Like plants always give you everything, sometimes more than you want. eh? But animals, as I said, they will test you first. They will see if you're capable, if you deserve the information, if you're trustworthy, if you're safe, and all that. So they will give you shorter answers, and they will wait and see how you react. And they, by the way, they will comment on your performance. They will say things like, "That was a good question," eh? Something like that, or they will because they decide how the conversation will evolve. They decide. They will say now for something completely different. Like, you ask something and they want to talk about something else. They will direct you in another way. But in the beginning, it sounds similar because the answers are rather dry, rather short, and it's a bit question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, because they are testing you. But with the plant, the evolution is as such that they will, as they trust you more, they will give you more. Usually the consultations are longer, much longer than with minerals, because it will take a while before you deserve what you need. And they will give you the juicy bits only at the end. And then you think, why did it take so long? So it is 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. With minerals, let's say 1 hour and a half, they start to repeat themselves because they said everything they need to say in general again. So in the beginning, the similarities, but the longer the consultation lasts, the more differences.
Right. Yes. Yes, that's very true. And so once you have established that, okay, it's going to be a gemstone remedy. Which
you need
one?
a bit more, of course. You need a bit more
Of course,
than
yes.
than this soft inside, and there are more characteristics. For instance, as I said, they're kind of straightforward people, now no nonsense people. For us homeopaths, we say they might be carbon-like, they might seem silicon-like, a bit like this. Silicon is a constituent of, or sometimes the only constituent of many gemstones. And they will tell you about their problems, their emotional difficulties, but they will conclude that others don't need to know. Like, I keep my problems for myself is like a typical sentence for a gemstone. Or I hide my needs. So they are aware of their needs, but they don't want to show them to, their partners, their relationships. And like, I solve my own problems, and they will say literally, like, I solve my own problems. So very often the people they have relationships with don't even know, or maybe if they're close enough, they open up, but not in your consultation room. They will admit that they do it, but that's their way of operating in life. I will try to solve my own problem. I don't want to burden people. You won't hear that in elements.
Yes.
That's not the way they will talk more about, I need support, I need grip, my problems are so heavy on me, I want to be lighter, I'm losing my self-confidence or whatever, I don't have enough capacity to. These are all the problems of the elements. Capacity to sustain themselves and to find enough let's say, insurance. But the gemstones make a more independent impression. So also, if you see the map, the elements are on the far left, and then the other groups are already a little bit more to the center. And that's first because they're more complex, because the complexity is bigger as you move to the right. and also because they have more layers, more aspects. So that's the complexity. Yeah. So there might be multi-layered and they have more aspects, which again makes you think about plants.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have a bit more, or you need a bit more confirmation than only, oh, I can't decide between a plant and a mineral, although that's a good one. And then the normal people, I can't help it. I read a lot about gemstone people who are very spiritual and they have, spiritual ambitions. For me, on row 4, they have normal ambitions, normal people, like, as I said, citizens, good citizens, want to be like everybody else.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't hear, or I don't see the spiritual side in my patients, and I have to say I have many gemstone cases, like a lot.
Yeah.
They're not rare. They're not rare at all.
Do you still need the diagram, by the way, or do you need to turn page?
Well, we can turn page because on the other side there's something that might be interesting as well, because once you know that you need a gemstone, then the next question is which one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the first page of the map, well, I had to put something on it. There is, as you can see, there are boxes, and the boxes have the color of the row they're referring to. So you see the green was the 4th row, and you see a few green boxes. So one is sarcodes and one is gemstones. Now I want to talk a little bit about the box of the gemstones, because it might be helpful to decide which one.
Yeah.
And for me, the best book I read, but there are many good books, and Peter Timinello is one of them. He has great books on gemstones, but his information comes from this person, Michael Ginger. I don't know if you pronounce it like this in English. He's German. He was German, the late Michael, or Michael Ginger. And this is in Flemish. It says healing crystals, but it's translated in English and all kind of languages. And the man is, well, let's say he did everything. Of course, he knows everything about gemstones. He was fascinated since his childhood. All his life was gemstones. He wrote many books on gemstones, and he did everything except homeopathy with it. So put it in your room, carry it on your body, doing leggings and everything, healing systems, but not homeopathy. Yet for homeopaths, it is such a good book, because it explains that you have like an identity card, if you want, from a gemstone, and you have like 4 main characteristics to look for. And the first one is, how is the formation? Is it a first, a primary, a secondary, or a tertiary formation? That means, is it volcanic? Is it sedentary? Or is it what is the third one? It's reconstructed. It's made new combinations of gemstones that were eroded, or elements that were eroded, and making new formations. Okay, and then you have the 7 grids, and gemstones only have 7 possible grids. So each grid has its characteristics in a way, let's say, to operate in the world, to have tendencies, to have mental and emotional issues. So he explains the personality types with the grids, which is very helpful. And Peter Timinello elaborated on it in a fantastic way. So his book on structure, homeopathy, gemstone and structure is like the book on the grid, actually, that he works with this. He has it in his fingers. And then you have the constituents, which are for homeopaths familiar. You have the silicon, and you have the iron and whatnot, the carbon and the sulfur, and not so many, by the way. And then you have colors, and he refers to the colors, to the chakra colors with their general characteristics. Now, if you combine all these things, Then in the middle of the book, you have a kind of overview with all these characteristics. It's a bit of a study, and I condensed the whole book in that box. So that's what you
Right.
see.
Yes.
That's the whole book. Of
Yeah.
course, it's better to read the whole book, but if you don't have time, you have a patient, you know it's a gemstone, you need some help. That's the first thing to look for. And then the second thing, and it sounds like I'm, going to advertise it, but it's a really, that's a gem in itself.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's a very important book. I totally agree.
it's so great. It says 555 gemstones. It's on from Michael Grid. It has pictures of all gemstones, all 555. It has one paragraph, and in the paragraph is all the information, like the formation, the grid, the color, the constituents, and then it has one paragraph on the most important characteristics on a spiritual level, on a mental emotional level, and on a physical level. You can't believe to find all this, you can carry it in your purse. It's such a beautiful book, and it's really a treasure box of information. So for me, that's, if you need a gemstone and you don't know which one, that's the first one to have a look.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And by the way, if anybody wants to get hold of your diagram, where can we find it?
Oh, on my website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can order the map if you want. Yeah.
Okay.
And of
What's
course,
your website?
my website is www dot thewhiteroom.be.
Okay, that's great. Do we still need the diagram, or are you happy to take
No.
it down?
You have an idea. That's like a lot of information just on this map. You can have it on your desk, so it's very easy. While you're having consultation, you can, have a look, and it will help you and direct you with the keywords.
Yes. Yeah, that's very, very useful.
Hopefully.
And I know that you said that you don't see the spiritual side so often. It's just like ordinary people. And I have to say that in the beginning, it was really highly spiritual people. I mean, people with psychic abilities, people with amazing spiritual. And I think perhaps it was really like the universe trying to knock me on the head to attract my attention and say, hey, these guys need gemstone remedies. But after a while, I found that I'm prescribing rose quartz, for example, like Tic Tacs. It's everybody needs rose quartz at some point. And so perhaps, and other, let's say, semi-precious gemstones rather than the precious ones like sapphire and diamonds and things. And I thought, and that's just my opinion, is that a metaphor for rare gemstones, for rare individuals, and semi-precious gemstones that are more commonly found for ordinary people? I don't know if I am talking nonsense, but that was the idea that popped into my head, because semi-precious gemstones, yes, definitely, very, very common.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure, because you see, if we prescribe, then the question is, what do we prescribe for? On what level? And when I say minimum, I would, in my, opinion, or the way I work, in my method, I call it the vital approach, which is a little bit of a word game with Anne Vervarcke, because my initials are AV and the vital approach is VA. That's one of the little jokes. So. And what is the vital approach? It's the idea that you have like two levels on the physical, which is the tangible, the material, and the energetic level, which is also physical. And then you have two levels in the mind, that's body, and then two in the mind, which is emotions and thoughts, like psyche. And then you have like a level above that. And that is what I would call the vital in accordance to what I think Hahnemann meant when he said disease is disturbance of the, what he said, the dynamis. Nobody knows what the dynamis is. But when he says it expresses itself with signs and symptoms on mind and body, then in my understanding, it must be beyond mind and body. Otherwise, it cannot express itself on mind and body. And it comes from the same source. So that, when I say the uniqueness, is that level, the level of beyond mind and body, where you feel yourself as you are without even knowing, because if a homeopath doesn't ask, you never ask yourself if somebody else feels different. I mean, that's your world. That's how you are. It's only when a homeopath starts questioning and people have difficulty to verbalize that, but we have all these expressions on mind and body. Okay, so that being said, if you prescribe on that level, then for me, then I say this person is a gemstone, means need a gemstone. That would be his most important remedy. He's like his simillimum, as we say. But then there's a lot of other remedies that will fit the person on a particular level with a particular problem or tendency or issue. And gemstones might be helpful on all kinds of levels. That's was what Michael Ginger did that well. He used it on a physical level. He used it on a mental, emotional level. He did all kinds of things with except homeopathy. So I think there is one best remedy, the simillimum, and there are many good ones.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely true. Yes. Yeah, I would think so. So do you have or do you remember a particular case of gemstone that was resolved with gemstone remedy?
Well, there are many cases. First that pops in my mind is actually the late patient as well, who was diagnosed with cancer. She had all the chemotherapy against her will, and actually she took it to not upset her children, because she had 3 grown-up children, by the way, and she didn't want them to worry. She didn't want them to know, and a big part of the interview was taken by her concern because one of I think this, well, it doesn't matter. I think the daughter and the son didn't get along well. And she was more worried about that, while I was thinking, well, you're in a position to worry about yourself. But she didn't do much. She was kind of cool about it. She didn't feel well. She thought maybe homeopathy can support me, because somebody else actually recommended me, like you should see her and you need her. Otherwise, she would not even have asked, I think. And that struck me so much, like talking of keeping your problems for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had tiger's eye. And she was good for a while, and then finally she, on a short period, in a very short period, she succumbed, which we often see with homeopathy in those cases. Like the simillimum gets everything out of it, and then without too much suffering, the end is fast and mostly peaceful. But that woman actually stayed with me because of her concern for her children, and she wanted harmony. She wanted, they're going along after she would not be there, even that. And I remember another girl, she had carniole, and she was from a family with a car business, like expensive cars, and the parents were always working, and they expanded their business, and the brother was a bit too young, and she was expected to help in the household, which she did. And then they had supper in the evening, and she said it's not like before. They are stressed when there's easily a quarrel. We don't have these good moments in together with the family as we used to have. And that was her main thing, because she was ambitious. She wanted to do the business of her parents later and all that. She was completely in the business, but she suffered, and she had, I mean, when I present it like this, it's like a small thing, but she had hysterical outbursts, and she actually landed with them in, in the emergency, because she thought she had, ruptured appendix, which was not the case. I mean, she was in pain and in cramps, and she was hysterical. And the main reason was the family harmony and the
Right.
good feeling that was disturbed.
Yes. Wow.
So there
So
was
what
this
was the remedy you gave her?
carniole.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, in
Yeah,
English,
it's a red stone, and it's called like that because it has the color of
garnet.
flesh, carne. Yeah,
Garnet. Okay. Yes,
yeah,
garnet. Oh, right. Okay.
yeah. And
Wow.
these intense, deep feelings that you would not expect in a girl who presented like, an ambitious business girl, like, rich family, and I'm gonna have a rich future. That was all
Yeah.
fine, but she suffered so much of the loss of her good times with her parents.
Yes. But
Yeah,
yeah, I would have seen. I mean, obviously, I didn't take the get, but this almost selflessness is remarkable. This idea that in the end, what really mattered to her was the family harmony. It wasn't even herself. It wasn't,
no,
everything else. Yeah, okay, but the main thing was the harmony with the family. That's amazing. That's incredibly selfless. I see that a lot, actually, the
yeah,
selflessness, what you said, what you described.
yeah,
This I don't talk about my problems, and that's why I give out so much rose quartz, because I see mothers mostly, and I always insist, if they come for their child, especially if it's chronic, if it's like autism or ADHD, and there's a lot of stress, and I always insist, I'm going to help your child, but you need help too, and we have to do this together. And it's a struggle, because they're always like, no, but I'm okay, it's my child comes first, and yeah, and very often they are like that with everybody, with the rest of the family. It's very typical
yeah,
mother. But that's why so many mothers need rose quartz, and therapists and nurses and all these people who help people. And then when they have a problem, they just like, yeah, I'll deal with it some other
yeah,
time, and I don't want to bother people with my
exactly.
problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I have, funnily enough, I have more than one, I would even say many, gemstones for social workers.
Oh,
And it
yes.
perfectly fits, because you cannot be too soft. Like plants, they're
Yes,
too empathic.
right.
Yeah. And they have difficult situations, like, young people in trouble with drugs, criminality, problems in the family with children, and
Yes,
aggression.
yeah. You
To
have
be
to
a
be
social
strong.
worker, you must have like
Yes, that facade. Yeah,
cool and
absolutely.
strong facade.
Yeah,
Outside, you know, be
yes,
tough, but
yes,
inside caring so much that you
yes,
want to do that work. And I have more than one social worker, and I think that is so gemstone.
yes. Wow, that's really true.
Mm.
Wow, this is so amazing, and I'm so sorry that the time is is up. We could go on for another 3 days like this, but thank you so much for being a guest here, and well, hope to see you again. But everybody can follow you, find Anne Vervarcke on Google, on YouTube, Fridays with Anne Vervarcke. Her videos are amazing. And yeah, thank you again. And okay, have a beautiful weekend. And I'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. It was my pleasure.
This show is not intended to diagnose, prevent, or treat any diseases or illnesses. The information presented within cannot substitute the advice of your physician or other trained healthcare professionals. The content of this show is for educational purposes only and is the expressed opinion of the show host and guests.